Hi, I'm Cami Wells, Extension Educator for Nebraska Extension and one of the State Fair 4-H Food Superintendents. Are you a 4-H foods judge? There's a lot to think about when judging food preservation exhibits. Today we're going to review some tips and information to help you in that judging process. First of all, safety is the most important. A deadly form of food poisoning called Clostridium botulinum can occur in improperly canned food. We want our 4-Hers to use correct and updated information when preparing their exhibits. This is not your grandma's kitchen. Any canning recipe older than 1990 is considered no longer safe. The recipe that the 4-Her uses in their canning can come from any source, but it still needs to follow current USDA guidelines. Encourage 4-Hers to start with safe recipe sources such as the USDA Home Canning Guide, state extension publications, or a 1994 or newer edition of the Ball Blue Book. Jams, jellies, preserves, marmalades, fruit, and pickled vegetables must be processed in a boiling water bath for the correct amount of time. Tomatoes may be processed by a boiling water bath or a pressure canner. Lemon juice or food-grade citric acid or 5% acidity vinegar are required as part of the food processing method when canning tomatoes. All non-acid vegetables such as green beans and carrots, as well as meats, must be processed in a pressure canner. Standard canning jars and lids must be used. Jars should be the same size, but not necessarily the same brand. The jar ring should be left on jars as it helps to protect the seal during transport to and from the fair, as well as during the judging and display process. All canning must be the result of this year's 4-H project, since September 1 of the previous calendar year. This may be somewhat of a challenge for some types of produce, depending on when local county fairs are held and when the produce is ready to be picked, but we do want to follow the USDA recommendations that home canned food should be used within a year. For can exhibits, the jar label should include the name of the 4-Her, county, name of product, and date of processing. This is needed to identify who the jar belongs to, just in case it gets separated from the entry tag or supporting information at the fair. Plus, it's a great practice to label jars at home, especially with the name of the product and the date of processing. What information should be included with the canning exhibit? This does not have to be on the bottom of the jar, but securely attached to the exhibit. The first one is the method of processing, either a boiling water bath or pressure canned. Number 2, altitude and altitude adjustment if needed. Most 4-Hers in Nebraska will have to adjust the processing times for their canned foods because most of the state is 1,000 feet above sea level. Number 3, processing time needs to match the USDA canning guidelines. Number 4, number of pounds of pressure if a pressure canner is used. Number 5, recipe and the source of recipe. Again, it can come from any source, it just needs to match those USDA guidelines. The supporting information for dried food should include the recipe and the recipe source, method of pretreatment, which prevents the fruit from darkening, and then drying method and drying time. So for example, a dehydrator, and then how long it took to dry the items, for example, 4 hours. Thanks so much for watching Fairs, Fun, and Food Preservation. If you have questions, feel free to email me at cami.wells@unl.edu. Have a great fair season.
Created using Powtoon.